Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome back to the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast. My name is Ronell Richards. I am your host, the author of Shut the Hell Up and Sell. I want to thank you guys again for taking the time to come hang out with us. I hope that you're getting some value out of this podcast. Let us know. Let us know if you're digging it. Go ahead, make sure that you're sharing this with your friends. Make sure that you are leaving comments on Spotify, YouTube. Rating us on Apple, wherever it is that you're enjoying this podcast. Let us know how you feel about it, because this is the People's Podcast. If you have read the book, you know that I'm about being very pragmatic. I'm a service-oriented guy, so I want to make sure that this podcast continues to evolve. It continues to be about you. So if it's resonating, if we're hitting, let us know. If we're hitting the mark, or rather missing the mark just a little bit, let me know that too. I want to know. We want to make sure that we're serving you the very best way we can. All right, time for this week's guest. I am excited to have Carole Mahoney on with us today. Carole, how are you?
I am, despite the snow and the cold, pretty flipping fantastic.
Pretty flipping fantastic. I love it. All right. And you just told me before the show that James Buckley, I think, was one of your favorite previous episodes of the show. I think he would have said something a little more, I don't know, should we say spicy than flipping? Maybe. I have no shout out to James.
My mom's going to listen to this later, so there's that.
Well, so you're coming to us from, let me know where you're at in the world, because you told me you're going to be doing some snowshoeing, which I've never done, by the way.
Oh, well, it's fun. At least I think it's fun. So I am originally from the Boston area, but transplanted to Maine when I was very young and just fell in love with the outdoors and the clean air. And we have more trees than people. Not that I don't like people, but I love trees more. And so we just got some fresh snow last night, and I haven't been outside in like 3 days. I haven't been in the sunshine for that long. And I'm like a cat. Like I'm going from one window to the next looking for the sunshine.
Nice.
So the dog and I are going to head out onto the frozen lake with the fresh snow and be the first ones to make our tracks in the snow and the sunshine. So I'm pretty psyched for that.
That sounds like a Hallmark card to me. Wow.
I'm such a Maine cliche, like with my wood stove and my dog and my, I'm writing all of the time. Like, it's like, I'm like the other version of Stephen King.
Yeah, now you've almost made me like snow, almost, but not enough. I'm not quite there yet. Well,
I'm all for going to Florida for a few months to cut my time short with it.
Yeah.
It's like one of those, like I can stand small doses of you kind of things. Like that's how I am with the snow.
You know what I hated the most about living in snow, Carole, is like the living in it. And what I mean by that, like, what you're describing sounds awesome. Go snowshoeing with the dog. Look at the beautiful lake. Oh, look at the sun that is like glistening off of the frozen lake. Here's my experience. Slush and dark and dirty snow and wet boots and
To be fair, I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to drive in a car. I don't have to deal with other people driving in the snow in that part of it. So I am a little bit in a like snow globe bubble here right now.
Okay.
So.
All right. Snow globe.
Yes.
All right. So, send me the pictures and I will just live vicariously through that. Let's hop into this bad boy. Let's start by just tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. How are you saving the world and helping people to be better sellers?
I am helping people to change their perspective on what selling actually is. And, we have this negative perception of sales. 7 out of 10 of us don't like sales. If you read Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human,
Mm-hmm.
and you go up to anyone on the street, any kid, and ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Kid does not say salesperson because we think pushy, slimy, sleazy. And so for me, I'm on a mission to change the perception of sales from pushy, slimy, and sleazy to helpful and collaborative and putting others first, because that is how we're going to transform not just the perception of sales, but the results that we see in sales. And it's a passion of mine because when I first started my own business, I ran up against this wall of sales and had to learn really fast or go get a 3-letter word called job on how to sell and do so in a way that didn't compromise my own personal values. So I take a cognitive behavioral approach to sales performance, meaning we're not just going to find out what is it that you're doing wrong, but what's the root cause of it? Why is it that we don't do the things that we know we should do and can do in the moments that we're supposed to do them, and instead do something else? And then why didn't I ask that question?
Yeah.
It all stems from the mindsets that we have in sales, and we can change our minds. So we can change our behaviors so that we can get a different result. And for me, it takes the guesswork out of what it takes to be successful in sales. It's not about the latest trick, hack, or other thing that we do today. It's really about how do we consistently stay in tune with the steps of our buyers.
It's not about the latest trick or hack, really? Because if I look at social media for about 15 seconds, that's what they're telling me. It's all tricks and hacks and 7 steps to this and 3 steps to that.
In the alphabet soup of sales processes and methodologies. You can do a Google search and here's the 10 best, the 12 this, the 10 that. How are you supposed to know which one's the right one for you and your buyer?
Mhm.
The short answer is none of them, because buyers aren't impressed with any of them. If you look at the quota attainment rates in sales today and all of the other stats that point to the fact that buyers are just simply not thrilled with salespeople.
Okay, so tell me about your business.
So, in my business, I work one on one with business owners and salespeople to help them overcome the mindsets that they have about sales. They've tried everything, they've tried all of the methodologies, they've listened and read in all of the books and podcasts, and
Except
don't
this one.
understand why, except this one. They don't understand why it doesn't work for them the way that it seems to work for everybody
Mhm.
else. And what they don't realize that it's their mindsets that are getting in their way. So in my coaching, we're evaluating their mindsets as well as how it impacts their skill sets through one-on-one coaching and training, and then working with managers to help them understand how do we work with our teams to actually create a behavioral change, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. How come you didn't make 100 calls today?
Mhm.
But actually helping them to change their behaviors. And then working with leadership to, set up house. What's the culture? What's the environment? What's the systems and processes? How are you onboarding and supporting a team that is the lifeblood of your business instead of treating it like the redheaded stepchild that most people think of?
Love it. Love it. Okay, so now we know where you are at today. I want you to hop back in the time machine with me. Okay. Whether it's the DeLorean or in the H.G. Wells, the
DeLorean.
DeLorean one. Okay, cool. Let's hop in the
Total DeLorean.
DeLorean and tell me what was your first sales job?
Oh gosh. I mean, outside of, Girl Scout cookies and selling door to door in that way, my first actual sales job where sales was somewhere in the title was with a little company called IVS 3D. They were interactive visualization systems. And this was back in 2001,
Mhm.
2002. First startup that I'd ever worked with. SaaS software, like it was Salesforce 2.0 back then. So, like, the idea of SaaS was like SEO. How do you spell that?
Mhm.
And my job was working with the VP of sales. I was literally the only salesperson other than the VP, handling all of the different clients that were coming in and making sure that orders were fulfilled. I was like the follow up person when things didn't come through when they wanted. I was like the ones that were going back out to bring them back in again. And the job itself, I didn't want to be called a salesperson. I resisted it at every
Mm.
instance, even though I got paid on a bonus structure on top of my salary, and it was a sales job. And I just hated the idea of being called a salesperson, so I called it everything else but that. But that was my first job, and it was my job to update the dashboards, which at the time was the whiteboard with these are our sales numbers for today and here's how we're projecting for next month and next quarter. So it was really, in a startup you wear all hats, so it was rev ops as well as BDR as well as account management. And the thing that I loved about it was just, like, for me, being able to talk to all kinds of different people around the world.
Mhm.
Like, we sold interactive visualization software for geologists and people who were scanning the ocean to create these 3D models that scientists, instead of looking at a flat graph or paper, they could actually visualize and walk through and what we called fly through the different environments where they were trying to figure out where to dredge, where to lay a pipe, where does the line stop and start for where this country owns it and that country owns it. So it was really like we did a visualization of the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean so that they could go in and out with actually having to be there. Like, get on the Discovery Channel, really cool kinds of stuff. And the thing that I learned most, I think, from this job is not only that, there's numbers involved with sales, but there's relationships that are involved with
Mm-hmm.
sales. And, just being able to talk with, through Skype with people all around the world and different cultures. And, I'll never forget, like, one of the first things that I learned is that, getting pissed in Australia doesn't mean that you're angry. It means that you're drunk. Like, make little fun, cool things like that. So that was my very first sales job, even though I only today can actually admit that it was a sales job.
And see, that is part of what I am on a mission to impact and change. I appreciate you sharing that story and your reluctance to be labeled as a salesperson early on. Fortunately, for me, I had a different experience, and I just came up in an environment where um, we loved it. We leaned into it. We were idolized by many, right? And so
Yeah.
when I came into sales, that's what we were proud to call ourselves salespeople. But to your point, there are a lot of people that end up in it and aren't necessarily proud of that. And some people
Mhm.
suffer from that for a very long time. I was talking to a good friend of mine who is a CEO of a SaaS company, and it was only until probably the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I think he said, to where he has really leaned into and being and feeling great and feeling just proud to be a salesperson. He's the CEO, but he's a salesperson. And that's what he's always
Everything
been.
is.
And but as he goes back to his college reunions, he'd always suffered from a little bit of inferiority complex, right? Because he's with this guy who's the doctor and this guy that's the
Mhm.
engineer or whatever. But what he's found is that they are far more intrigued by him than he is of them, and they are far. So over the years, he's just received such great like feedback. They're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! What you're doing, exciting! It's awesome!" And so he's learned to really build that pride in our profession. So I want to share that with the world. And that's part of what we're
Yeah.
doing on this podcast by sharing these stories, by bringing on rock stars like you to share their experience, share your stories, and to build that pride. Because, folks, if you're listening to this, you're watching this, I want you to pound, right? Hold on, stop. Pound your chest right now, just like this. If you can't see it, I want you to hear it. You hear that? Pound your chest. Be proud. This is
Oh,
what we do. You should be proud because everything has to be sold. Everything we are
nothing happens until someone does.
nothing. And we are core to how business is done, to the economy. Like if we're not doing our job, nothing else works. All right. Okay. So there I'm off the soapbox.
Exactly.
Soapbox off. Okay. So
I will just add this to that
please.
is that when you think about sales as being the connection between a problem and a solution, that's what makes the world a better place, right? That's the thing that changes things for the better is when we can bridge that gap. And that's the role of sales. So to think of it as anything else that's
Ooh,
not completely noble,
yeah.
there you
I
have it.
love it. Here's what I love about what you just said. So oftentimes when people and kind of have that vision of sales or seller, they're thinking about someone that's pushing something on someone that doesn't need that something that we're pushing onto them. Where what what sellers, successful sellers know, and professionals like you and I know, is that we're in the solution business. We're solving problems. And when you can really kind of get your head around that and understand that that's what you're doing at the end of the day, but not just say it, do that. If you have not read the book, go what first of all, what are you doing with your life? If you've not read the book, just stop now. Just end it. I'm just kidding. But go read the
No,
book.
just shut the hell up and go read the book.
get the hell up and go read the book. But that's what we're talking about. What I'm talking about in the book is really understanding what matters most to our customers, really
Mhm.
understanding what they care about, what's going on in their world, and then crafting solutions that impact that, divorcing ourselves from our product and service. Once we get in front of them, it's about them. What's going on? What do you care about? And then we provide solutions that impact what they care the most about. So, man, that's why I love having these conversations with people like you that just
You're
get it.
uh,
It's like,
exactly. I'm so excited to talk with you about this too because you're absolutely, I mean, preaching to the choir, but you're singing my song right now because I have these ridiculous shirts that I designed for coaching clients that says not about me, but it is upside down. So the person wearing the
Can read
shirt
it.
can look down and be reminded.
Love it. That's great.
Because it's the most common advice that I would give to my coaching clients when they would start talking about their calls or I'm reviewing their calls. And I'm like, who cares what you want? It's not about
Yeah.
you. And I had one client who's like, I need to tattoo it on my forehead. I'm like, yeah, but you'll never see it. So t-shirt. But
What a great idea.
sales is not something that we do to other people. I'm going to sell you on this. I'm going to persuade you. I'm going to convince you. I'm going to manipulate you. It's something we do with
Yep.
them. It's a collaboration between two people to solve a problem, like you said. So it can't be about us, because when we start making it about us, that's when buyers don't trust
No
us.
doubt. Love it. Okay, next question for you. So at this point of the podcast, I want to ask you to share an unsung hero with me. And for those of you that are listening to this podcast for the first time, I ask all my guests to give me one of their unsung heroes from their career, because any of us that have been in this business, been in this profession rather, for any length of time, knows that we didn't get to wherever we're at on our own. There were people that made an impact. Maybe that it was small, maybe it was big, but I like to call those people the unsung heroes because they don't always get the attention or shout out, because we're just doing what we're doing in our own world in a vacuum, right? It's not like the Oscars. You don't get the opportunity to shout everybody out. So this is your mini Oscar moment, but you only get to shout out one person. Who's it going to
I
be and
know, and
why?
that's the hardest part. So this is the person who I've not given a shout out to before, like on a podcast. I have so many mentors and so many people who have helped me and influenced me. But and everyone who's listening from IVS 3D, when we work together, when I say this person, they're gonna like be, what? Are you serious? But Mr. Bill McKernan, who was our VP of sales, he drove me absolutely insane, like absolutely insane, because he kept telling me I was a good salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't want. He also, though, gave me the advice that I still give to even my coaching clients today, or anyone who I'm mentoring in their career, is first one, he was the one that told me to get on LinkedIn in 2005. So I'm only on LinkedIn because of Bill. But the other thing that he told me, and I think that this is such important advice, especially for women in sales and minorities in sales, is that when you accomplish something, write it down, share it out with others. And so, when we achieved like a 61% growth in income in the first year on renewals for customers, he's like, you did that. You need to write that down and you need to put it on your LinkedIn profile. It needs to be foremost in front on your resume. And I'm like, resume? What, are you going to fire me? He's like, no, but you're not going to be here forever. There's only so far that you're going to be able to go here. And so for that, I owe Mr. Bill a lot. I used to always call him Mr. Bill. As well as, he was the one that was probably the first person that really confronted me on what I thought about sales and what my mindset was about sales, because, like I felt like I was always butting heads with him because I didn't like the idea of sales. But he was probably the most patient person with me, because he actually was the one that decided to hire me after the CEO decided not to hire me the first time. Mr. Bill was the one that said, yeah, let's hire
Mm.
her. And even when I first started my consulting business, he was my first client. So I owe a lot to Mr. Bill, even though I probably have never said it before. And everybody who I used to work with is going to be like, there's no way she just said that.
Well, shout out to Mr. Bill. You have now said it. It is on wax. It lives forever on the internet.
That's right.
All right, Bill.
And I'm going to tag him in this later. So he's coming at you, Bill.
Awesome. Love it. All right. So that was a great story. And I love the how the direction and advice that Bill gave you as well. I think that's something that a lot of high achievers struggle with. And you mentioned minorities in this space. A
Hmm.
lot of us that are high achievers in this space and are minorities, we kind of have an issue with. Um, I'll speak for myself. Issues with keeping track of those things, meaning that we're so just laser focused and grinding at such a high level to achieve that
Hmm.
rarely do we write that stuff down and have some sort of gratitude and appreciation for those accomplishments, because we can't stop the grind. We have to keep going to the next thing. So I think that was great advice. All right,
Yeah.
now it is storytelling time. time for you to share another story with me. So, for those of you that have not read the book, in the book, the book is basically two books in one. The first part of the book is philosophy, it's storytelling. I want you guys to understand why I think the way that I think. And I'm doing that through telling stories that hopefully you can relate to from my career. So, I feel like that's a great way to educate people as to philosophy. And so that's why, Carole, I want to ask you to share a story. Share something with us. It could have been a good experience, a bad experience, but whatever it was an impactful experience and help you to formulate your philosophy on business or sales.
Yeah. So this is actually the story that I wrote as the introduction for my book, which is coming out in September. And it takes place, Christmas, a few years after I had started my business. And, I'm lying in bed with my husband at night and I'm just mortified, like where I can't afford to buy groceries for my kids. I can't afford to buy Christmas presents for my kids. Like, what kind of mom can't support her own kids? And I would think I was maybe 6 or 7 months into starting my own business in the middle of the last Great Recession with no savings or contacts and anything. And so it was a really hard time for me. And I decided I needed to go and look for a job. And so I had updated my resume and I was going out and doing job interviews. And my sister had introduced me to her boss, Jack, who was looking for someone for a content marketing director at their media publication company. And as I sat down with Jack, because he knew my sister, he was very candid with me that it was between me and one other candidate for the role. And he was having a hard time deciding. And he said, if you were me, what would you do? And, my first reaction was, well, hire me, of course.
Mhm.
It's a local job. It's great pay. Like, I should be the one that gets this job. I really need this job. And instead, I stopped for a second and I paused for a while. And I thought, this is my sister's boss. And if this doesn't work out, is going to damage her relationship with him. It's going to damage my relationship with her. And so I couldn't just say, well, I'm the best person. And so instead, I asked a question. I said, well, what is the most important aspect for someone to be successful in this role? And he said, well, we really need someone who's comfortable with sports marketing and management, that will, go to the games, that will be the mascot, that will stay later for the game afterwards to talk to sponsors and things like that. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I could do that if I had to do that. But I know that the person that you're talking to loves to do that,
Mm.
has a lot of experience with doing that. And if I were you, I would actually hire him. And he's like, whoa, like he totally expected me to say hire me because I can do this, this, and that. And he's like, I really didn't expect that answer. And I really appreciate your honesty. You've made this decision a lot easier for me. He says, if there's anything that I can help you with, any referrals or introductions that I can give you in your consulting business, let me know. And I was like, no one's ever said that to me before. And I was kind of blown away by the experience. And it took me a little while to kind of understand what had happened. And I was talking with my husband later on that night. And he's like, well, what was different about this conversation from any other job interview or sales conversation that you had? And I said, I wasn't really concerned about me. I wasn't concerned about how this was going to impact me. My overriding thought was, how is this going to impact them? And made it all about them. He's like, well, you weren't trying to sell them. I'm like, no, I wasn't trying to sell him on the idea of hiring me. I wanted him to make the best decision that was for him. He's like, well, then maybe you just need to stop selling people in order to sell people. And that's when I realized that one of the things that I was struggling with in sales was that I was making it all about me, my products, my services, what I wanted, the job interview and how I looked on that job interview. And I was getting so emotionally wrapped up in things that I wasn't in the present moment with people. Like if I hadn't taken that pause in that conversation and had just plowed through, then it probably would have been a completely different conversation, but it put me in the present moment. It made my focus go on the other person. And that's when I started to realize, like, it took me years to figure out like what this all meant. But for me in that moment, it meant that I can be successful in sales if I stop making it about myself and if I start actively listening and asking questions to understand. And that sales, this is when I realized that selling isn't something that I do to other people. It's something that I do with them.
Mhm.
It was a collaboration that we had. And so that's what caused me to start digging into the psychology and research of how we change our mindsets and how that impacts our behaviors and how we can actually change our behaviors and make it stick. and how then we build trust with people, and the neuroscience and the psychology behind all of that, which is the reason why I ended up writing the book, because I wanted people to be able to learn from that experience and avoid some of the pitfalls and the mindset hangups in sales that caused me to almost fail in my business the first time. It pushed me into bankruptcy. If I had realized all of these things sooner, how much different things would have turned out for me, and how much more different they can turn out for others that are like me in the same situation now.
Nice. So that experience, basically, from what I'm hearing, that just that helped to create your overall philosophy on how to sell to people or how to build
Yeah.
these sales relationships. Love it.
Yeah.
Uh, eh,
Yeah. It's the foundation for all of the coaching and training and work that I do now and how I run my own sales.
nice. Well, perfect transition. Okay, now on the coaching and training, and so now I want to ask you for some practical, pragmatic, simple advice, some direction, a tactic, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, but something someone can take away from this episode and make immediate impact in their business. What you got for me, Carol?
Yeah. So this is one of the quick wins that I share in the book. And in combination with writing down your accomplishments and reflecting back on those, like as you said, is in sales and in business, we're always pushing the edge, which puts us right outside our comfort zone. It makes us uncomfortable. And so writing those things down and reflecting on those when things get hard, that's what helps us to develop our grit and hope for what's going to come next. And also, this is a quick win that I share with all of my clients when I first start working with them. And I call it the wee wee factor. I actually got it from Jeffrey and Brian Eisenberg's book, Waiting for Your Cat to Bark, which is an old marketing book from like the early 2000s. But they talk about this wee wee factor. And what it is you have to monitor or look at the language that you're using in your messaging, in your conversations, and in your calls. And actually sit down and count. How many times do I say I, me, we? And count that against how many times you use language like me, I'm sorry, you, yours, theirs, because that means the words where you're focusing on yourself, you're wee-weeing all over yourself. You're talking about what you want, what you need, what you think, instead of focusing first on the buyers, focusing on what their goals are, what their outcomes. Like you said earlier, what are the goals and the impact of those things on them? And simply calculating in your email thread, for example, how you started off. I think this would be great. I would love to. They don't care. Start instead with something that is a buyer focused language and that talks about something that they care about, because that's what's people's going to grab their attention. And when you're in a conversation and you're asking your questions, making sure that those questions are buyer focused questions that are open ended, this is going to then help you to not only build trust with your buyers and they're going to enjoy talking with you, but it's also the thing that's going to get you to understand what's going on with them. And it's also going to help them to see things differently than they had before, simply by changing your language to be more buyer focused language. It is the quickest and easiest win, and it is something you can practice anywhere, on anyone, at any time. So a lot of times especially BDRs, are like, how do I get more practice runs in? Like, how do I do some more role plays? How do I develop these skills? And what I tell them to do is start practicing this buyer focused language and open ended questioning, sequential questioning on everyone around you, starting with, I can't tell you how many Uber drivers life stories I've heard in all of my travels, or the grocery clerk, because I simply ask them open-ended questions about themselves using a buyer focused language, and suddenly people want to share all kinds of things with you. So you can practice these techniques on anyone. And the thing that will happen, I started practicing on this on my kids and my husband, and instead of getting into arguments and debates, we actually got into collaborative and productive conversations. And our relationships started to improve because of that. So even as you start practicing on others around you, you're going to find that your relationships and the way people respond to you are going to change for the better.
Love it. Okay, great stuff. And that's very practical. And I love that. And a lot of times I think in the sales world, everybody's got like can diagnose stuff, right? Like, oh, this is the
Hmm.
problem. This is the issue. But very rarely do we get simple, like, here's what to do. Here's how to fix it. Here's how to get better at it. And so I appreciate that because, as we were talking about before, sales relationships, not before show, sales relationships they're relationships. It's all the same, right? So these sorts of skills that you want to develop as a better seller are communication skills, which you can develop with the Uber driver or the grocery store clerk. I love it. Okay, so tell people, Carole, where can they reach out to you? Where can they get a hold of you? Where are you hanging out? Where are you snowshoeing? Just kidding. They don't need to know where you're snowshoeing. What's the best way to
Oh no, there's
connect
somebody on
with
the
you?
right. Oh, so the best way to find me, I'm the place where I spend most of my social media time is on LinkedIn or on Instagram. So LinkedIn is, obviously the things that I'm thinking about at the moment, but you can definitely reach out to me directly there. You can also go to my website, which is unboundgrowth.com. And there you'll see some more information about the programs you run. We have a blog. And I also have a brand new website that's up that is carolemahoney.com, where that's more about our speaking programs as well as where you can get the most information about the book.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And those will be in the show notes as well, guys. Make sure that you reach out to and connect with Carole. And if you happen to be somewhere in New England area and it's like nice snow out and you see somebody snowshoeing near a picturesque lake, that just might be her. Carole, this has been a pleasure. Thank you again for joining us and dropping some fantastic wisdom. And most importantly, those of you that are listening to us, that are watching us, thank you. Thank you for investing the time in this. Thank you for investing the time in yourself. If you want to be great at anything, this is what it takes. It takes a focused intention on personal development and realizing that, hey, you don't know all the answers. I don't know all the answers. Carole doesn't know all the answers, but you know what? I know that there are enough people out there that have had experiences in life and business that I can learn from those experiences and I can apply those lessons to my own life and business. And that's what we hope to do in this podcast. So thank you again for listening. If you have not picked up your copy of the book, go do that. We're on audiobook as well. So you get to hear my voice narrating the book. And a little better than this voice that you're hearing today, which has got a little, I had a little cold, but so what? Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. Show up and show out. That's another thing in sales, right? We show up. You got to show up. You got to get the job done. Anyway, the audiobook is out there. It's available. Make sure that you also, if you've enjoyed this podcast episode, which I know you have, this has been a great one, binge the rest. I think we're up to nearly like 20 guests thus far on this podcast since we launched it. And it's been a joy to listen to all of these great sales leaders and listen to them drop their wisdom. So binge them, make sure that you're listening after you take Carole's advice and do exactly what she told you to do. It's very practical. All right. It's very practical, very simple. Go apply it and then come back and start binging the rest of the episodes. Thank you again for watching or listening, guys. And hey, if you don't remember anything else, remember this. Shh. Say less. Peace out. Hey guys, it's Ronell, and I just wanted to thank you for listening to this episode of the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast. If you liked it, please rate us 5 stars on whichever podcasting platform you're listening to this on. And while you're at it, punch that subscribe button. That way you get notified every time we drop a brand new episode. Hey, I'd also appreciate it if you went to our website, shutthehellupandsell.com, and became a member. It's absolutely free, and you'll have the opportunity to listen to previous episodes of our podcast, check out some of our free courses, get a copy of the book, and we'll send you sales tips and motivational nuggets from time to time. Lastly, if you'd like to book me for either appearances or speaking engagements, just send an email to my team at team@shutthehellupandsell.com.